Good afternoon, business owners. This is Chris Whelan from Chris Whelan Coaching and the Wellington Centre of Business Excellence. I want to talk to you today about the one role to replace yourself in first. And of course, this is part of building a self-managing business. Most owners who decide to step back start with a plan, frankly, that's far too big. They list everything they do, or they should stop doing, and they hand over every responsibility and promise to work on the business instead. 3 weeks later, of course, they're back to doing all of it. Not because they changed their mind, but because the plan was just too big to execute. Trying to step back everywhere at once feels like basically another full-time job. Every role needs a standard, a decision boundary, a capable person, a handover, and a way to inspect the result. While you are trying to remove your judgment, the business keeps needing your judgment to make the change happen. So the handover, anyway, in that situation stalls. The owner gets nervous, the work comes back. The conclusion is often that the team is not ready, when actually the real problem is that the change was never properly sequenced. So don't start by removing yourself from the business. Start by removing yourself from one role, right? Not from the whole business. And bear in mind that not all roles are created equal. The first role to replace yourself in is not necessarily the one you're best at, or you enjoy the least, or you can document easiest. It's the role where your involvement has the highest cost and the lowest, what I call the lowest ceiling. That means the time, the interruptions, the stress and decision load that your involvement creates. The ceiling means the growth, the capacity or capability the business can't reach while you remain in that role. Now, a role can look small on an organization chart and still be the biggest constraint in the business. If you still run every important sales conversation, the issue is not that you're busy selling. It's just that the business can't take on more customers without you taking on more of you. Your presence has become effectively the limit on commercial capacity. I worked with an owner a while ago who was still personally running, literally that example, every sales conversation. The team could sell and had the commercial judgment to handle the conversations, but the owner just couldn't imagine trusting anyone else with that relationship. So every opportunity waited for him. The sales role, to me, looked like a strength because clients valued his involvement, but it was also the cap on how many clients the business could take on. The starting point was one role, one standard, and one handover. The owner, in this case, defined what a good sales conversation needed to cover, and then trained the person taking it over and stayed involved, but at agreed checkpoints rather than as the default closer. Removing himself from the role actually doubled capacity in sort of about 90 days or so. Look, there are three broad ways to respond when you know you need to step back. You can keep doing the role until someone is completely ready, and of course that protects the short-term quality, but it preserves dependence. You can choose one, if you like, high-cost, low-ceiling role and build a proper handover. That takes more thought, but creates evidence that the owner can move out safely. And I guess the third one is you can remove yourself from the easiest role first, and that can create momentum, but may leave the main sort of constraint, if you like, untouched. My recommendation generally is a 90-day one-role handover. So list the roles you still perform, score each one against three key questions. How much owner time interruption does it consume? How much is the business limited because you're still in it? And what evidence says it can be made? Can be made transferable. Then choose the role with the highest cost and the lowest ceiling, not the role that feels most comfortable to leave. I think this is critical. Define the outcome, right? The standard, the decisions, the role that the role owns, the situations that need escalation, and the checkpoints for building capability. Don't hand over a vague responsibility and call it delegation. Hand over a defined result with enough authority to produce it. This is, to me, the 7 systems approach in practice. Decision clarifies the authority. The leadership clarifies genuine ownership. Delivery makes the work repeatable. The commercial system obviously protects the customer and margin outcome. And capacity and resource gives the new owner time and support. To my mind, the sequence is reasonably simple. Systemize the work, firstly, right? It has to be systemized, documented. Train the person, and then delegate. Doing it without that is not delegation, it's abdication. And of course, the other point is to use what I call expect and inspect, rather than watch and correct. So the outcome that you want, expect them and inspect them, right? Now, bear in mind, you're not disappearing and hoping. You're building evidence that the role can operate without your constant presence. The journey, as with all journeys, starts with a single step. Once the role has moved, you have more capacity and, of course, evidence for the next handover. Next week, we'll look at what the business actually feels like when this starts working. But for today and for this week, what's the one role you're in right now that is actively limiting the growth of your business? And as I say, don't choose the easiest one to leave. Choose the role where your presence is costing the business the most. Write down the standard. Right? Pick up a pen, write down the standard. And then the authority in the first checkpoint. And then start the 90-day handover. That's where you start replacing yourself. I'm Whelan, and this is the Self-Managing Business. Have a good one. Cheers.